Alright, shalom to the Israelite community. Israel being Israel for the Israelite Brotherhood. Alright, Israelites, we need to wake up. And we need to wake up fast because, the only reason we in captivity is because, we broke the covenant, but the reason we in captivity longer now is because the Israelites are blind and confused and don't know what's going on. But a lot of things are taking place in this world that, finna usher in our heritage, and it's imperative that you Israelites wake up to truth. It's a lot of Israelite organizations, and they basically doing the people's history that we abandoned our covenant to. A lot of you Israelites, man, it's baffling how after all this time that we've been in captivity and that the Israelites don't have some sense of what's going on. The Israelites like to party and have fun and so forth. And our enemies, provided a lot of fun for you Israelites in these last days. And a lot of you just lazy, just don't want to wake up and do no research because you think you know everything. You think you got it all figured out, but you don't. And it's going to end up like this, that a great percentage of you Israelites are going to be in captivity forever. And some of you, when you're in captivity forever, our enemies going to torment you and you're going to perish because it can't be Israelites going to the promised land to worship Yah and then Israelites in captivity that don't know the truth, like it was in the BC days, like when the exiles come back home from Babylon after we ran into Africa. That'd be Nehemiah, Ezra, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. How those Israelites couldn't exist when the vast majority of us broke the covenant and went into Africa. It was one or the other, and it couldn't be two covenants, one broken and one not broken. And how the ones that come back from Babylon perish real fast, real fast. There's a lot of history going on that you Israelites are not aware of. And it's sad after all this time. You got big organizations and your leaders are not teaching you any truth. You think he teaching you some truth, but he ain't. He using the group's history, Ashkenazi and the Sephardi group's history that we abandoned our heritage to. And a lot of you Israelites, man, are stuck on they the Khazars, that all Jews is the Khazars. Man, that's far from the truth. And then that's why these people are able to hold on to our heritage. Man, I made a video not too long ago, man, about the chosen people and then how Ashkenazi been having a good time under the chosen people title. And they've been, man, having a good time on earth, but it's about to come to an end because we have to come into our heritage to worship Yah. That's what the real chosen people are to do, are to submit to the will of Yah and worship him. And then that make you chosen, not because you just claiming to be a Jew or something else, and therefore you have inherited chosen people rights. Now, man, that's coming to an end. And it's like, that's another thing that I want to talk about is how the BRICS nations, they were created to defeat and get rid of Ashkenazi. Get him out the promised land. Get him off the promised land is BRICS' goal, for the simple reason is that BRICS got to service the Africans and the Arabic nations, with the Edomites. I mean, it's got to service them. It was created by the Edomites in the Eastern nations. A lot of you Israelites don't know that you got Chinese Jews come off the Sephardi stock. You got Asian Jews come off the Sephardi stocks, and they've been working through them by proxy. But in the end, it's to get rid of Ashkenazi, who control Western culture. Western culture been protecting Ashkenazi through Christianity as the chosen people. They've been having a good time. They've been having a good time. but it's finna boil down to them being removed if they not careful. And then what they have to do in order to stay in the Israelite heritage is bring us back home and settle this Israelite issue for once and for all. And then this is the funny thing about it, is that you got Africans, you got Indians, you got Chinese, and people from all ethnicity claiming the Israelite heritage, and how Ashkenazi ain't got no, gripe against that. He ain't got no, problem with that. But with us real Israelites who broke the covenant, that went into Africa during the Babylonian wars, he don't want to talk about that. They don't want to acknowledge that, and they don't want nothing to do with it. Man, I'm talking about they don't want anything to do with it, and how they run from it and try to get away from that. But it's getting close to the time, man, to where that, it's got to be addressed. I've been addressing it, for a while, and they're gonna have to address this. They're gonna have to address this, that we are the Israelites that broke the covenant during the Babylonian wars. There's no history outside the Tanakh other than what the Israelite Brotherhood show. That we are the Israelites that broke the covenant during the Babylonian wars, that went into Africa to do the Egyptian religion. They don't want to talk about that, and how did they skip all around and jump all around from that subject and don't want to deal with it, because they know that if they deal with it, then it's not about who's chosen, but who's finna worship Almighty Yah and who ain't. And they don't want to be faced with that, because they've been having a good time for a long time. Everybody done profited off the transatlantic slave trade, and all the nations then got up and doing good because of it, from, when we was enslaved. And then a lot of nations profited off of our labor and so forth. It's just a fact that cotton, sugar, and all the other entities were shipped around the world from, our captivity, and how a lot of nations got their start when at first they was like uncivilized in a sense, but how since then, all the nations done risen up. But this is the thing, the time is finna come what Ashkenazi got to make room for us. He don't have no other choice if he want to stay on the promised land and stay anywhere near our heritage. How they finna have to settle this Israelite issue, and they best to settle it with truth, and how they can't go get no group that don't know no truth, or a group that done snuck in and didn't come in by prophecy to settle this Israelite issue, and how that's not gonna work, and that it's time for truth, because Almighty Yah presence is gonna be on earth, and all the truth entities are being laid down now, that everybody gonna have to come through or work with. And Ashkenazi, they gonna have to bring us home, else they not finna be able to stay in Shem's house. In the BRICS nations, they know that if they remove Ashkenazi, that's the end of Western culture far as military and dominance, and that how that they been slick doing it a little bit, chipping away and chipping away. But now it's at the time where Ashkenazi got to make a decision of whether he's going to be in the Israelite heritage, or get scattered, man, around the world. And that's going to be the end on them, because it's a possibility the other groups can bring us in. That Ashkenazi just ain't got to be the ones that bring us in, because if Sephardim bring us in, then they want to be there when we come into our heritage to try to get a chance to be in it, like they was doing Exodus. Even though we dominated, that they still close by us. And I got a lot of history showing that shouldn't happen. Ashkenazi is the son of Gomer. Ashkenazi is a son of Gomer, and Ashkenazi didn't get created because some the Jewish community went to Germany and so forth, and how that the Ashkenazi name existed before Germany was even a nation, by the Assyrian Ashkenazi and so forth. There's a lot of little names that lead to the Ashkenazi name, and how that they exist before Germany, and that I showed that they come into our heritage during the Babylonian wars, and are the ones that chased us out. That's why they got to bring us back, because they chased us out. It was by the order of Almighty Yah, and that they chased us out, and used, arrows on us and destroyed our land. Man, the arrows are still found today in the promised land. But how the Ashkenazi is the ones that chased us out, when Almighty Yah told the prophet Jeremiah to go to the north and call the families of the north. That was no other than them. And then how that they been in our control. They been in our heritage and in control for a long time. A lot of you Israelites don't know that. But this is what I want to tell the Ashkenazi community. They settled in Scythopolis. And that was head of the Discopolis cities when they came into our heritage after the Babylonian wars. That's where they settled and so forth. But this is what I want to let the Ashkenazi men community know, is that we're not enemies with you. It's nowhere in the Tanakh that show in our last days, that we supposed to have battle with you and fight with you over our Israelite heritage, and that our only enemy is the Edomites. Our only enemy is the Edomites. So, you don't have to worry about us. So you can relinquish some of our heritage to us. That it belongs to us, and you can't keep us out of it. And you should know that it's millions of Israelites, man, walking around right now today aware of their Israelite heritage. They might not know the truth in the true history within the Israelite heritage, but they know that they Israelites. And that's like, Ashkenazi slick control America, and they kind of like want to keep us in captivity as long as they can. So they can hold on to the Israelite title. Man, it's been the best time of their life. Man, is having the Israelite title and being seen as the chosen people through the religion Christianity. That's why they put a lot of you Israelites on Christianity during the slavery days, because the plan is that you will see Ashkenazi in the end as the chosen people. So therefore they got to keep you under Christianity, and that's what America has done to us. And then it's doing its best to keep us in Christianity, because then you see Ashkenazi as the chosen people. Those are the only images you got, and the only way that you know otherwise is to study the Tanakh and listen to Israelite Brotherhood history. Now, the West can be easily destroyed by the misplacement of Ashkenazi out of the promised land. Man, that'll destroy Western culture as we know it today if Ashkenazi was removed from the promised land. And then that's what those proxy religions or proxy groups that was created by Seth Eridim is trying to do, and they're going to eventually do it, because we Israelites have to come home. It's no prophecy say that we have to stay in captivity, and that other people is going to keep our heritage and we're going to stay locked down forever. It's no prophecies in the Tanakh. The prophecies is that we're going to come home, and the people who had our heritage and had us on lockdown is going to bring us home. And that's none other than the Ashkenazi community. So they finna have to relinquish the Israelite title in the chosen title. Well, they chosen now to bring us home. But if they don't, man, them folks is finna have a good time. They finna party on them now. And you Israelites cannot pray for them. They cannot be prayed for. Your prayer is finna be empty air, because we have to come home. And we can work together, the Ashkenazi community and us, once we are settled in our heritage. There is no prophecy saying that we're going to run them out and that our only enemy is the Edomites. That's our only enemies. You know, that's like another thing, man. You Israelites, man, need to start supporting truth. You need to support truth so we can get this ball on the road. And that you Israelites need to wake up and come out of your slumber. You know, you've been asleep a long time. And it's time for us to wake up and come back into our heritage. You can't be the Negro no more. You can't be the black or the African American no more. And how that those titles is finna fade out. And how that the Israelite title is finna come in. And that's why you have to study and get familiar with your history and your heritage so you can make it and you don't be locked out. Because they gonna have to settle this Israelite issue one day, and it can't keep going on and on. I thought it was finna come to an end when they attacked Iran, but Ashkenazi find a way to wiggle themselves out of all situations that ain't favorable to them. They been doing good wiggling out from up under the situations that can bring them to an end. But how long can they do that? They can't keep doing that, and that is getting close to our time to come home. It's our time to come home now. But how they keep wiggling around and dodging this little destruction and dodging that. But them other nations is figuring it out, and they finna have them cornered soon. And the whole promised land finna be destroyed if they don't come on and settle this Israelite issue. Settling this Israelite issue, you know, even though they a war nation and they ain't just too liking peace on the earth, but it'll bring peace to them and how that they'll be able to settle in the north. We don't want Tel Aviv. We don't want Tel Aviv. It's nowhere in the Tanakh that we will get Tel Aviv in the north, but that how we will get the south in the parts that Edom controlled, because Edom came into our heritage after we ran out. He even helped them, you know, get us up out the land, and did how that we got to settle in the parts that Edom has as a payback for coming into our land and help destroying us. See, a lot of you Israelites don't know real Israelite history, and you only use the myths that the other people done created about the Israelite heritage. Where's some real Israelite heritage history here, and that the Israelite Brotherhood has it? Now, man, it's time for them to bring us home. But we'll come home faster if you Israelites support real truth on the Israelite history. You know, a lot of you walk around thinking that you know everything, but I'm here to tell you that you're far from the truth, and that I could put your truth to the test by explaining how we went into Africa during the Babylonian Wars, and that the book of Jeremiah contained its history only, and that if you're not familiar with that, then you don't have no truth. That's the test. That's the test to see if you know truth or not, is if you familiar with the Babylonian Wars and how we went into Africa to do the Egyptian religion, and that caused the transatlantic slave trade. It's no other history but that. It's no other history but that. And if you're not doing that history or showing that history, then you're doing the myths that the other peoples created. You know, that's why come out captivity is so long, because you got the vast majority of the Israelite community using the people history that we abandoned to. Now, a lot of them books sound good, and you done got a lot of history out of it, and you think that you just know and familiar with Israelite history, but you far from the truth. That you so far from the truth that it's causing us to stay in captivity, because it's not a challenge to them people using false history or using their history. They can brush you to the side and they ain't got to pay attention to you. But when it's enough of us saying that we went into Africa during the Babylonian Wars in the book of Jeremiah, and that what caused the transatlantic slave trade, and that's why come our history line up with the prophecies and curses that Prophet Moses say will be on the Israelites. Now, if you can't do that, you're not using real Israelite history, no matter what you say and how you feel. No matter what you say and how you feel, you're not using real Israelite history. But if you compare your history to the Jewish community history, it's going to be identical because you're using their history. Now it's time for us to wake up, man. We've been in captivity a long time. We've been up under the other folks' authority for a long time. A lot of you Israelites are comfortable in captivity and don't understand what sovereignty means and what sovereignty does, for free people. And that you cannot be free. Yeah, you free to walk around in America and you free to participate in the American culture because it keeps them under control. You know what I'm saying? It keeps us under control. And then it's like this. A lot of you Israelites support things that keep us in control, under control. You support the whole American establishment, and that keeps us under control. America is not our friend. America is not our home. And America is not good for us because it keeps us from serving Yah and doing the things that we supposed to do. But because Ashkenazi control America, that he don't want us to come home, and they try to keep a tight grip on us here, and then try to keep you fooled and deceived and so forth. But man, it's time to come up out that deception now. We have to come home. So it's time for you Israelites to wake up and start using real truth and stop using the Jewish community history, and that the Tanakh is our only history. Is our only history. And that we have to challenge these folks, man, with this history on settling this Israelite issue. But we can't if the vast majority is ignorant to real Israelite history. That's like, man, I look at the Israelite community, man, the ones that's up under that title, Black African American, they so lost, man, they soul is gone, their mind is gone, and they have no idea what's happening or what's taking place in this earth, and how everything boils down to whether we're going to be free or stay in captivity a little longer, because them folks don't want to come up off that chosen title. They doing everything that they possibly can to keep that chosen title. We the chosen people trying to keep that title on them, and that how that they got to come up off of it. They got to come up off of it, but they not going to come up off of it easily. And that we going to have to, show them truth so everything can be equal. Like I say, we not trying to dominate the Ashkenazi community. And it's like they know them prophecies in the Tanakh, how the people that did us wrong gonna have to get right with us, and then that they don't want to be faced with that yet. But we Israelites got to bring that on in. We got to bring that on in, man. We tired of being in bondage, and that how we ready to be free to control our own destiny. We don't want the laws over us. We don't want America laws over us no more. And how we want to be free to make our own laws and make our own decisions. That scares them, and that how that they don't want that to happen. But when you Israelites wake up and start supporting truth, then we're going to be heading that way. And that they going to have to reckon with this. And that, we're going to have to come into our heritage. And ain't nothing they can do about it, because it's prophecy that we come back into our heritage. Nobody can change that. They've been trying to stall it and wiggle around, you know what I'm saying, to keep from having to do that. But eventually in the end, that's what's going to have to happen. All right, shalom to the Israelite community. It's time to wake up and time to start using truth in the Israelite community so we can speed up the end of our captivity. Shalom.